Yes, so can we start? So I ask you for some patience. I know that this is the last sessions that we have today. It has been a very long day, I know it, but I promise that the next 40 minutes, something like that, will be super interesting for you and for your research and all your activity. Just for you to know, this session is hosted by 2 European projects. The first is AEGIR. We will have a presentation about it. This project is about the building envelopes and how we can design and how we can renovate them. It's very interesting. And the other project is named EUFORE, that it's how we can create and how we can define the future innovation, the future innovations that we need in building, not only good, but in the forest and all the sectors that are related to that. And in fact, we have among all of you, there are some people that are quite familiar with this, with both of these projects. So the session, I will read it exactly. It's about innovation, building products and system for resource efficient circular construction. So this is a very long title, but the idea is that there are 2 words that are the main ones. The main ones are, the first of those main words is innovation. I really love one of the presentation, one of the slides that has been before that. Innovation was at the root of a tree. And this is super important for us. I mean, this is because it's through innovations where we can integrate and we can answer many of the questions that we have. And the second relevant word is circular. I mean, we have been asked so many times if there is a not good or not, and the answer it's mainly innovation. How with innovation we can circulate? We will see it. Different examples about this part. So I'm sure that you are here not for hearing my words, but for the presentation. So we will go one by one.
Okay, thank you. This presentation is an introductory presentation of the session because because we are several authors, as you can see, 3 from InnovaWood and 1 from Tecnalia, which are worked together in the EUFORE project. And I will present an overview of the historical trends in wood demand and in innovations for construction sector. As I mentioned, the work is developed in the framework of the EUFORE project. Which has the objective of develop a strategic research and innovation agenda for the forest and the forest-based sector. The content of this presentation is divided in 3 parts. The first one is general overview of the wood production trends in Europe, mainly focused for wood construction. The second one is what are the species mainly used for mature products. We can say the products already used for building construction. And the last one is just to see the trend in innovative products for the construction sector. Focus on the first part, maybe it was not yet presented today, so I think that it's good to have this general overview. Most of the wood used in the European industry, this is EU27, comes from domestic removals, from primary wood from the forests, and a small part comes from recovered wood or also from imported round wood. And the main 3 industries are sawmill industry, panel industry, and pulp. And sawmill industry consumes most of the logs from the domestic removals. As we can see here, part of the domestic removals directly from the forest go to energy. And there are secondary products or byproducts, which are residues or secondary products from the industries, which can be used again in the industry, as we can see in the panel sector and in the pulp industry. We don't have data yet for the sawmill industry, how many reclaimed or reused or secondary products from the industry are used again in the sawmill industry. But most of the byproducts go also directly for energy. So this is a picture for 2017, but what we would like to have is more added value products used in a cascade use before sending it to energy. This is a picture of 2022. This is data provided by Firestat. Okay, we can see that from the domestic removals in EU27, 25% go directly to energy, and the industrial Rhomberg sawmill industry is mainly focused in construction, but also construction, wood packaging, furniture and interiors. Wood-based panels are mainly for furniture, but also for construction and packaging. And wood pulp is mainly for paper, pulp and paper, but also for biorefineries and new materials. Focus now in the soundwood products. We can see here the historical trends in soundwood production, and we can see the difference between coniferous and non-coniferous species, or softwood and hardwoods. We can see that there is an increasing trend in softwood production, but there is a stable market for non-coniferous species, and which is very, very low. Of course, we don't know what are the end uses of this quantity of soundwood production, because the public databases don't provide this information, but based on information from several reports, we can say that around 10–20% of this soundwood is for the construction industry, and around 70% for structural products. Looking now at the wood-based panel industry, and we have some representatives here, maybe they can even explain it better, but at least to have a general overview, this public database provides of the different products, how are the historical trends in production for particle board, fiberboard, OSB, and plywood. We can say that particle board and fiberboard, which has the higher production, is mainly for furniture, but also for construction, and OSB and plywood is mainly for construction. Okay, this is just a general overview of the wood construction value chain. Our intention is to develop or to design more industrialized timber buildings, and to do that we need to take into account many things. The architectural design, the structural design, the standards, the codes, also the modeling of these structures and how to connect these models with the industry to do this CNC machine, numerical control machine, for shaping these elements. But at the first stage, we need, of course, the wood from the forest, and we need to know what are the properties of this wood, which is the raw material to develop these elements for construction: glue-lawn, cross-laminated timber, and panels. Focus now in the construction sector, in the mature products. We can say that digitalization is a challenge for the construction sector, but not so much for the timber construction sector. Here's just an example of a timber building, a timber bridge in Spain in 2004, not 24, 20 years ago, which was developed in a BIM model or a CAD/CAM model, and then manufactured in a numerical control machine. So timber construction is pioneer in digitalization of the construction sector, and the rest of the construction sector need to learn from the timber construction. Okay, what are mature products? We can say that all the construction sector is regulated by the Construction Products Regulation, and to market any construction products in Europe, you need to obtain the CE marking. We can say that mature products can be those products which are manufactured using or following the harmonized European standards. So you can obtain a declaration of performance and then the CE marking. And innovative products are products which don't have yet these harmonized European standards. Which are mature products? Okay, we can divide it in structural use and non-structural use. Structural use is, for example, this glue-laminated timber or LVL, and non-structural use can be wood panels and other round-and timber for wood flooring, cladding, and etc. Focus now in the first step. What are the mechanical properties of the soundwood for these structural purposes? This is an overview. You can see in this matrix, in the first column, this is the European countries, and in the first row, there are different wood species, divided in coniferous and non-coniferous, or softwood or hardwood and hardwood species. We can observe that before the 19th, the structural products were focused mainly in 4 species. We could say mainly 1, spruce, but also, fir, Scots pine, and larch. But there are a trend into diversify in more wood species, and we can observe down here that, just as an example, that from the 90s to now, there are more softwood species graded for structural applications, but also hardwood species. But we can see that only in some countries. There is no common trend. There is some initiatives depending on the country. Going now to the innovative products. What are the innovative products? Following the same structure, we denominated innovative products to those which we can obtain the CE marking through an alternative way. When there is no yet harmonized European standards, you can go through the European Organization of Technical Assessment to obtain an intermediate certification, which is named ETA, and then you can obtain the CE marking to market your products across Europe. Analyzing this EU database, we scanned all the construction products with ETA certifications in Europe, and we identified 800 ETA certifications using wood, which is the structure in these product areas. We can say that most of the products are related to structural timber construction with 450 products, but in this case, most of them are connectors. Followed by, followed by the timber building kits with 100 products, and thermal and insulation products and systems with 90 products. Focusing now in these structural timber products, just to show some examples. There are some examples of innovations, which are, most of them are connectors, of course, it's still connectors, but even there are wooden connectors. Of course, CLT is here as innovative product because there is no yet an harmonized standard for manufacture this kind of product. And in structural products, we can observe, for example, hardwood glue lamps, which was presented this morning in several presentations, or prefabricated slabs, or I-joist, or different kind of innovations. Here, we can see the trends in the development of these innovative products already on the market, and this is an increasing trend, and we can see that these numbers corresponds to the versions, because maybe there is a new innovation, an innovative product in the first version, which is in the green color, but sometimes the products need to be updated, so there is a need to review the ETA certification with several new versions. But we can see that there is an increasing trend peaked in 2018 and 2023. And this is the distribution of innovations by country. We can observe that Germany is leading these innovations. Here is not divided by products. Probably there are many steel connectors there, but anyway, they are leading the innovations. But followed by Austria, Italy, Finland, and Poland. But there are some innovations also in these countries. And what we can observe also here is that there are countries outside Europe applying for this ETA certification in Europe. And why? We don't know why, but we can imagine that maybe because they want to sell their products in Europe, or in the other way, maybe they want to have this certification, well-recognized European certification to sell their products in other countries. Just for conclusion, this is one example of what's happening. This is eucalyptus glue lamp timber building in Uruguay, South America, which used local resources, with eucalyptus lamellas from Uruguay, using the Eurocode 5, European standards, using the European standard for manufacturing glulam beams of hardwood species, which is not yet approved, it's not yet an harmonized standard. And they use all this knowledge that Europe have to develop a flagship there. So we in Europe have a responsibility, not only in Europe, but worldwide. And yeah, just as a conclusion, okay, there is an historical increasing trend in Europe in the production of softwood, mainly softwood species, and wood-based panels. The European public database do not provide the end use of the product, so it's not so easy to follow how many of these products go to construction or to packaging. The number of strength-graded wood species is growing, including hardwood species from some countries, but it's still needed to diversify more in wood-graded species because of this climate change and the increasing demand for wood. And of course, there is a need to update these EN standards with the mechanical properties of this wood. Okay, there are new certifications of innovative wood products and systems, which peaked in 2018 and 2023. And the technological innovations are mainly related to the material efficiency, to enhance performance and advanced design and prefabrication systems. And finally, connectors, structural products, timber building kits, and thermal insulation materials are leading the innovations on the market. And finally, I think that there is another one. Yes, I think that the new policies enhancing the use of sustainable wood products and circular products will lead also to develop more innovative products for the construction sector. Okay, this is all for our part. Thank you to my colleagues for this presentation. And this is the project, the Euphoria project, if you are interested in to follow it, and even into go to through the website and fill the survey about innovative products and forest innovations in the sector. Thank you very much.
Come again, and yeah, let me just quickly present again our company and our business. And I think it's very typical for many of the timber industries we see in Europe, but also especially coming out of Austria. We all started as a sawmill business. Then in Austria we had very high mountains, very expensive raw material. So we all had to be very innovative and develop the product for further uses. And maybe that's also why you see a lot of industrial developments coming out of Austria, and also quite a success of Austrian industries all around Europe. In our case, we are based in Austria, but meanwhile we have 3 production sites also in Germany. We have one in Slovenia, joint venture in Spain, and now just recently also in Canada. We used to have a sawmill in Russia, which for obvious reason we had to sell a year ago, and the glulam line that was planned for the Russian production is now being set up in Canada, and we see a really rising market of mass timber on the North American continent. What does that mean? An integrated timber industry in terms of products. So we almost produce all the raw material ourselves. We have an output of 1 million cubic meters of sawn timber, and maybe 70% of that is used as raw material for the next part, and 30% we are still selling as timber products. At the same time, we are also buying in the market raw timber for our productions. And then we do structural finger-jointed products, plain timber, also, of course, cross-laminated timber and glulam timber. And we also have quite a lot of byproducts, because energy has been a topic as well. I know that we have a principle of cascade using, but I also think we also always have to look at the sustainability. And when a tree grows, only a certain part is really usable for structural purposes, the rest of the tree, we need to do other products. And when you produce the energy on a sawmill site, I think it's the most efficient way to use the residues and also to tackle climate change in terms of replacing fossil energy. Sustainability, and that's one thing that this really stands for the industry, and that's very important also in the light of the discussion of EUDR. It is our most interest that we have well-managed forests, that the forests are growing, that the forests are not disappearing, and that we have the raw material also for the future. If we would be careless with our forests, then we would be out of business tomorrow. So we are very much aligned, but I think we need to think about the systems, how we can provide for sustainable forestry, and I believe we should keep it simple and not over-bureaucratize it, because then this will not work and in the end will not achieve the goal we all have in common. Yeah, so we have been through this the whole day. I'll get back to the reuse, because that is really for the following innovations a very, very important argument, also why we can sell these innovations in the market. This is the example of the charging hubs. I have brought now another one where you see more a flat surface, and this is also how the parking spaces I have been talking before in the morning could look like. And one of the key arguments when we make projects like this is the reusability, because these are clear items that after their lifespan can be easily dismantled, can be reshaped and put into other uses as well. And that's the same for logistic halls, everywhere where you have large beams in place. And maybe a little more details on the timber hybrid tower. We call it hybrid tower because when we started to develop this tower, we were aiming first to do the whole thing in timber, but it really turned out that the upper part is the best use of the material is steel. But the problem with the especially high towers, where you have the big engines and the higher wind, is that you need a very solid base. And when you build this with steel or even with reinforced concrete, the higher it gets, the more soft it becomes as a structure. I'm not an engineer, you know, I'm just repeating what they tell me. And with the timber tower on the bottom, we can overcome these problems. We are using much less transport to bring this type of tower to the construction site. You know, these normal windmills, they are very big items that need to be transported. We only use a third of the concrete in the foundation, because we only need 4 quite small foundation points instead of a big foundation where the steel or where the round tower goes up. And that is especially for areas where you have more forests or also alpine areas. It's always a very important argument. Huh? That's an idea how you could use the whole structure even more efficiently in the future. So what we have done with this project, there has been really a very long developing and engineering and research process. It took us 5 to 8 years to get to this point, but now we have a certified solution, and that's very important in the timber industry. Yeah, we are hoping that we will start with the first tower next year. Maybe when we talk about innovation, it's not something that you develop a new product and you sell it in the market. We're talking about really a lot of know-how that goes in, a lot of development time, and that's what we call system solutions. You know, you're not selling a cubic meter of wood, you sell a solution that implies all the advantages that wood can bring. That is was also initiated, you know, with our last government in Austria. We also had the Green Party in the government, and our infrastructure minister, she was very much enforcing carbon storage, also in the official transport area. And that, I must say, initiated that the, it's called ASFINAG in Austria, that's the transport authority that built all the roads. They started to think, okay, let's think about where we could place wooden products in our whole process. And that was one traffic gantry. That's where they put all the signs. And it was very interesting. Typically they are made of steel, but the duration of a steel beam is less than 20 years. Because of the salt you use in the streets, there's a very high erosion in the steel. And with this type of bridge, we're aiming for 30 years, for instance. There's a lot of sensors in that beams, because we need to learn what does the traffic do. There's a lot of vibration because of when the trucks go by, the whole thing starts moving. There's surveillance of the moisture content. And as you can see, you know, it's also all exposed in this type. The wood is made of larch, you know, and we also want to prove that wood is also a very durable building product. And you can do the same with standard infrastructure items like bridges, because the lower part of the bridge is the part that really buries all the weight. And typically this is a very cost intensive part, you know, labor intensive. You bring there the scaffolding, you put in the concrete, you need to wait until it's durable, and it takes a very long time. In this case, we were prefabricating the whole structural beam of the bridge, and then the surface acts like a roof for the wooden structure. We are also pretty sure that the durability of such a product is very, very high. Yeah, and the last innovation I wanted to show you, and that's a good example of also of modular construction. These are the bicycle ways which have been developed by a startup in Switzerland, where we took some shares to support them. The idea is on one side very simple, but also very innovative, refined. So you have a column system that you can very easily drill in the on existing streets, for instance, or even in uneven terrain. And then you have a wooden bridge, let's say, of 20 meters. Of course, it can be adapted to the use, with also the pavement, the street. You have 1 cubic meter of wood per meter length of the road. And again, the advantage is that it is very fast, so once the decision is done, obviously it takes the municipalities and the public process very long to decide where to put it, how to put it. You have all these administrative barriers you need to overcome. But the system is very, very simple, and especially for cities where space is becoming an issue and getting closer, to bring all the bicycles on the second floor, and therefore also a solution not only in the innovative, environmental-friendly way to build, but also to remove the traffic from cars to more bikes in cities. Yeah, so these are some examples of the future use of wood. It all starts in the mind, and please take this with you and encourage everyone to think about if there could be a better wooden solution. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll try to keep it short. In the next 10 minutes, I would like to make some concrete suggestions to all of you to team up to unlock capital to accelerate the timber revolution and transition in the built environment. So let's start from the big picture and move our way down to our world of technology and construction. So the EU Commission recently has been very specific, setting clear expectation for the new EU Commissioner for Energy and Housing. You know, enhance the environmental performance of the built environment, build more affordable and sustainable housing, and raise more capital to deliver on this. Now, policymakers, they do realize that these large transitions require significant capital and also come with challenges. So, if you look at the overall ambition of the EU to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 2040, what it essentially implies that between now and 2040, close to 10% of the total EU GDP needs to be invested to achieve that target. If you look at the second, 75 to 80% of that required capital, annually required for the next decade and to 2040, needs to come from the private sector. And the other component which is important for investors, if you look at the investment profile of most of the transition assets or investments, they represent often higher risks than traditional investments because they require or rely on new technologies which are not matured or not fully developed yet. Now, if we take a simplified perspective through the lens of the institutional investors, so our pension funds and insurance companies, I mean, they have their expectations, of course. So in their world, they are defining their risk-return perspective according to those 4 categories. I will not go into the detail, but this is basically their compensation for the risk they're taking. So core is like inner city, office, fully rented, high-quality tenant, and it goes all the way up to opportunistic, like new land, new development. So they want to be compensated for the risk they're taking. In addition, institutional investors like to deploy at scale. They want to deploy big tickets. And secondly, they want to allocate capital to where the transition risks are low and where their proof of contributing to the transition is evident and obvious, because they would like to have that claim in addition to the commercial return, which is the #1 priority. Now, I would like to share some of the components of our journey of making green more investable, and also, sharing a real-life example of how we address and navigate transition risks for institutional investors. Before I dive in, just a few words on where we sit with CRE. So we are between conventional and mass timber. It's a combination of wood, steel, and concrete, and it's a prefab timber hybrid technology. Example, what has been delivered with our technology, HQ of Vattenfall in Germany, currently building 500 residential apartments in Spain. I think most of you are familiar with this company. Will not spend too much time. Founded by Hubert in 2008, Hubert Rhomberg, sorry. First building completed in Austria in 2011, and since then, 21 buildings completed, 9 countries, 3 continents. And I think, one of the key things which I personally really like is that this concept can travel. So it can travel across borders, it's flexible, it can adapt to local building codes, it can adapt to local supply chains, it's utilizing existing local supply chains, and it's a network, it's like an ecosystem. So a lot of partners which are part of the CRE system, they share best practice, learnings and know-how, which has proven to be incredibly powerful. Now, going back to what I promised in terms of sharing a real-life example. Now, I don't want to go into too much details, but if you look at the transition risks coming from the institutional investors, they're very obvious, they're listed on the left side. But essentially what I want to convey here, that what I think we need to do as an industry is to translate our real-world expertise and experience into their language, which is a different language that I've been observing today. So we need to provide comfort, go fact-based, and educate them that the perceived risk or the perceived transition risk, which is often perceived as very high, is manageable. I mean, CRE is just an illustration. I think I've heard many other companies speaking about the way they navigate and mitigate risk. I think you need to illustrate that and do that with data. Here is an example, in terms of fire hazards or nature, CRE can manage that. We'll not go into the detail. Here's a fact-based assessment. In terms of construction risk, which is a major issue for investors when they think about the required transition. I mean, it's all about the availability of people. I mean, in addition to know-how and consensus that something needs to change, is the technology ready? But secondly, do we have the manpower to execute? Which is an example of their assessment, how they look at transition. Do they want to allocate capital to where there is a shortage of labor? What's the alternative? What can mitigate the lack of skilled workers? Now here is an example of what CRE does to mitigate. I mean, it needs less workers on site. It needs less skilled workers. It is compliant to the EU taxonomy, etc., etc. Construction, in terms of what does the system represent? I mean, I've heard it earlier today that in the end we need to industrialize and standardize. I mean, this is an example of illustrating to the investor that this is something that can be replicated and scaled because it is standardized. So you are de-risking execution. You are de-risking a concept that can travel throughout the EU. Actually, it has proven to be able to travel the world. So these are very high comfort factors for investors to consider allocating large tickets to this type of transition. So let's stop here. Final page. Give you some insights on our journey. So the track record is there, as you've seen, and I think many of you can share a similar track record. But the next stage in that journey is to really start to feed what we have proven, what all of you have proven with data. I think that's the key deficiency at this point in time. Of course, there's data on individual projects, but you need to create an investable universe around it. So if you look at real estate, just the traditional, there's a lot of data for benchmarking to prove commercial return, to prove efficiency, etc. And I think timber, I mean, all this data and expertise is available. It just needs to be consolidated and shared. And again, I think that's an invite to all of us, including myself, is to start sharing what we know and structure that data. And then, the other thing I've been observing, and I fully sympathize with that, I think, we need to break these walls. There's a lot of resistance to change. If you look at architects, GCs, I mean, across that whole traditional value chain, I think there are many incentives to start working together, and I think it starts with, direct dialogues and, take one business case that works and try to replicate that at scale. So that's an invite from our side to engage with us and connect, and happy to share our learnings, but also our failures. So, thanks. Over to you, Xavier. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the introduction, and also thanks for the invite. I'm very happy that I can present today the AEGIR project. So before telling you what we're doing in this project, I want to shortly tell you why it is important to develop a flexible facade renovation which enhances the energy performance and circularity. So we heard a lot about today why the construction sector is performing bad in terms of CO2 emissions. Here's just a picture of it, that 40% still comes from the construction sector, and while looking a bit deeper into it, where do these carbon flows come from? It's mainly from the operational phase, so how are we operating our buildings, but also how do we produce our buildings? So 11% comes from the embodied carbon stored. And this is maybe a good sign for some of you, most of the emissions come from the concrete production. But on the other hand, we need to improve on our embodied carbon. So within the past, of course, we've been always producing more of them, but some countries are implementing their reduction targets. Here you can see UK, but actually the Paris Agreement asks us to be faster in decreasing our carbon emissions, and the European Union even wants to proceed faster with this development. So while zooming a bit in, where are these carbon flows coming from in terms of the building layers, we can see that most of the carbon is caused by the structure, but also from the skin and the surfaces within the building. But also when we look into what materials are lasting the longest, we can see that it's the structure that is actually lasting the longest, up to 150 years, and also the skin of the building can last up to 75 years. So that means that we should preserve this material, we should look into the structure and the facade, and renovation is one possibility how we can conserve our resources, how we can make this transition happen. But while looking into our building stock is that we have a problem with it. We need to renovate it. We need to deeply renovate it to save up to 60% of energy, because almost all of our building stock is built before 2009, so it doesn't comply anymore with our energy performance restrictions. So these problems we are targeting in AEGIR. I'm not going to read out the entire title because it's a bit long, but just some buzzwords. It's about digitalization, energy, circularity, but on top of it, of course, facade renovation. So we are several partners together with InnovaWood. We are from 9 different countries. We are in the middle of the project, so we have 2 years to go. And what we're doing there is that we want to provide a modular and standardized facade renovation. We want to meet with this facade renovation a nearly zero energy building performance. We want to renovate 4 different buildings in 4 different countries, and we want to apply circular economy strategies. So what are these circular economy strategies? So we need to rethink the entire value chain, so we are looking into materials up to the building scale. We want to do that through design for disassembly, through reuse and recycling processes. So really need to close this gap, and renovation is actually really targeting this, these goals of the R strategy, so it reduces the use, reuses and recycles buildings. So before we started, very early in the project, the first thing we did is that we developed KPI, key performance indicators. We didn't invent them, but we took them from standardized methods such as the LCA. And besides, of course, reusing and recycling materials, we also included the global warming potential. So this was, in our view, not enough, so we looked into a broader vision. What is circularity? So we looked into the levels framework which assesses circularity. So we added durability, but also how do we manage data in our process, and of course how can we demount buildings in the future. And then we said, okay, it's still not enough, we need to look back into what circularity actually means. So we had a look into the cradle-to-cradle approach and the R strategies, and added several more of these KPIs. So not going into detail to this, just to tell you that it's we need to apply these on different scales. So from component assembly to building level, there's always different requirements on these KPIs. So what we first did is we looked into the component scale. So we deeply looked and analyzed our materials we are going to use in this project. So for example, we looked into the insulation. So we took the, based on a standardized method, the material flow analysis. We analyzed, for example, here an insulation, which is made 80% of PET, and we looked onto its embodied carbon, and based on this, we looked deeper into what materials come into this product. So is it made of recycled secondary material? So we assume that then the carbon emissions are almost zero, or is this material comes from primary resources, such as here the polyester fibers. And then we also looked what is going to happen with this material when it's not needed, when it reaches its end of life. And we had to look into what is happening now. So following the LCA approach, we looked into the state of art today, which can be improved in the future, but yeah, it's hard to estimate. That's why it's not that visible in this graph as the material input is. So after analyzing the products which we knew we're going to use in this project, we also needed to find new materials. So we are actually giving advice to the architects what they can use for cladding. And that is again based on a methodological approach. So we looked into the CO2 emissions for several different materials, including the architect's favorite product, a material aluminium, which performs the worst. But of course, renewables perform very well in terms of CO2. But our next indicator would be like how much actually is used of secondary material. So in this case, aluminum performs quite well, but also other materials such as a plastic tile made of 100% of recycled windows, or recycled ceramic tiles which are made 100% of construction waste. But also we can see that reclaimed eucalyptus performs very well in terms of CO2 and also in terms of reused. So that's why we propose the architects to use reused wood. So we had a deeper look into what is there on the market. So thanks to Vanesa, we looked deeper into construction timber, pallets, or eucalyptus wood from mussel platforms, and we also compared it in terms of costs. And what we see is that it performs quite comparable to primary wood. And last week we've been on the General Assembly in Romania, and finally there's a decision what materials will be used in the Spanish demo case, and luckily they decided to use reclaimed wood. But they're only going to use it partly because, again, they are afraid of water damage, so that's why it's very much covered. And for the other cladding material, they're still looking for materials, so we are suggesting them, or what they are looking is into laminated panels. So again, this whole analysis begins, what is the panel with the smallest CO2 emissions and the highest recycling content. So if you have any ideas, I'm very much looking forward to hear them. So to conclude, in terms of the reuse of wood, is that it has a great carbon footprint. It can be, it's reused, so in our terms it's very good. It can be even cheaper than primary wood, and nowadays it can be in the future reused by 27%, so this is just an estimation. The downside, unfortunately, is that we might treat it further, it might be contaminated, so you have to look into that. But also, like future paths, how are we dealing with it in the future? So what happens nowadays is mostly incineration, so we should change that. And yeah, again, this maintenance, based on our experiences with the owner, they're very much afraid that they have to maintain it. And so we might, find some solutions which ease that. And our takeaway so far from the project is that we again, that we need to holistically evaluate products. So it's not only LCA, but we also need to include other KPIs such as demountability or durability. And again, we cannot leave the architects alone with these decision making. So in an ideal world, they would have a consultant that helps them to take decisions. And we heard the problem with data, so it's actually hard to get data. So we need to share more data about products, where they come from, etc. Product optimization is a long-term process. We hoped to speed this up with this project, but yeah, it actually takes several years to develop a new product. So hopefully that speeds up. Yeah, and reusing products is ideal, but not always possible. And we learned that also today in the morning, that LCA for renewables sometimes is misleading. So also here methodologies need to be optimized, and other KPIs should be included in that. So that's from my side. You feel free to follow our project. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's my honor to present our new project today. So we just kick-started this week. It's called WoodStock, after the festival, but also because it's a good name. So our goal in WoodStock is to empower climate-smart use of wood in the European construction sector. And we want to focus on zero waste and circular solutions, and also on underutilized wood species. So we will use post-consumer wood, hardwoods, and low-quality wood as well. But we also want to mainstream wood use in general for multi-story wood buildings in Europe. As you can see, we have 13 partners spread over Europe. And what I also want to highlight is those green dots that you see, which are actually our living labs. So this whole project is focused within the framework of the new European Bauhaus, which means that we are going for a very participatory and multi-actor approach. And we aim to do that through 6 living labs. So we have one in Slovenia, InnovaWood. We have the Green Village in Delft, the Living Lab in Galway, which is a community center and a creche. And we have the Resilient Habitat in Bordeaux, which will be student housing, the Trondheim Living Lab, and the Living Lab at TUL in Poland. So as I said, we had the kickoff earlier this week, and you might have noticed a lot of our partners are actually in the room today. It was a great event, very inspirational, so we're hoping that the next slide, our methodology, we will be able to do the project as we are expecting. So as I said, the whole project fits within a living lab framework, so we will co-create a lot with stakeholders and actors, which will be students, practitioners, policy members, so we will try to reach everybody. Part of the method here is we will map the material flows that are out there. So not only coming from the forest, but also from the building stock. We will look at the carbon flows. And we will also look at the environmental impact because we're also going to work with dynamic LCA, but we're going to try and come up with a robust tool that can be used by many people. The idea is also to have, at the end of the project, very concrete policy and business strategies to be published. So for any policy people here that want to follow the project, the last slide I will show a QR code. And we're also going to develop a roadmap for mainstream wood use in Europe. Through these co-creation processes, we're going to develop zero waste and circular wood products, so both products, building elements, and building designs. And we're also going to develop a wood book for that. And also a very important part of our project is the European Wood Construction Observatory, which we're going to set up, which will be an online platform that is AI-driven. And the idea is that it's not like a project website, but it really gathers all information from all projects out there related to wood and construction and all papers out there. And it can be really a hub for the future that will be sustainable even after the project. And what you can see also here is a NAP compass. We're not the New European Bauhaus session here, but just to show you that these values have been important guidance while we were writing the project, and it will also be an important guidance throughout the project. So if you want to know more about everything that we're promising and seeing if it happens in reality, you can get involved. You can join our WoodStock network, and then you can receive newsletters and follow our LinkedIn page, and hopefully also join one of our living labs one of these days. So very welcome to join us.
We have seen some innovations related even to wind turbines that are very interesting. We have seen even, and it's very adequate to have this innovation or how we can recycle these muscle platforms that being in here, I think that it's very relevant in this case. So now it's time for all of you to ask questions to the presenters about whatever you want. So time is yours, so please just raise your hand and somebody will give you a mic. So, please.
Thank you, Uwe. My name is Chris de Rook from Wood.be in Belgium. I have a question regarding the ETAs, or European Technical Assessments. So they are supposed to be some kind of emergency entrance for innovative products for which there is no harmonized standards already in Europe. But we know from experience that obtaining an ETA can take up to 2 years' time. So that's a bit slow for something that's supposed to be an emergency entrance into the market. Shouldn't we strive for something that is more efficient and less time consuming than the process of getting an ETA?
Yes, I completely agree. And I think that this is one of the objectives of the new construction products regulation. One of the objectives is to make faster the process to get the harmonized standard available for the market. So one of the objectives of this new construction regulation is that, to provide more harmonized standards. So I agree. It's a hard pathway to obtain the CE marking, but anyway, it's possible. So, and there are people interested. So, yeah.
Better than nothing. Yeah.
Yes, it's better than nothing.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Please say your name or affiliation and ask your question.
So I'm Antti Kolmes from UPM and Bois. And as we could see, you approached raw material supply, or the amount of sawmilling that we have. We saw some new applications for wood, which are evolving, and then we saw an interesting perspective on the financing, on a financing framework. But I was actually wondering, particularly in the Central European context, do you have any concerns about raw material supply? Because what I saw in your picture where we were looking at history, it's true that in Europe, particular sawmilling of coniferous species has increased, but if we actually looked at the picture ahead, we're actually going to see it start dropping. And it probably already actually has started dropping if we would take just the last 2 years into the picture. So how do you see that?
I mean, from our Central European point of view, there has been quite an impact. We don't have the exact data, you know, how much the wood stock really has reduced. If you look at the numbers of Austria, and we do every, I think, 8 or 9 years, there's a real inventory of the forest. So we measure every hectare in Austria, what is the wood stock. And I can only say, in the past 50 years, it has increased from roughly 800 million to 1.2 billion. So even with the very intensive use of timber, the wood stock was growing, and also the forest land has been growing. The recent pine beetle attacks there in some areas, they're really the impact can be seen. There's simply no forest anymore. The question is, what type of forest will regrow? I personally think there will be a forest, and the forest will adapt. Maybe it takes 300 years to adapt to the climate, and that's the problem for our lifespan. It's too short, and that's why everyone is worried, you know. But we have a lot of examples where trees are prosperous in a warmer climate and even more dry climate and so on. So there need to go a lot of research into that. But I think the limiting factor is really the regrow that we can take, and with all these new products and initiatives and growing demand for wood, that is the actual limitation we will have in the future. So I believe there will not be enough wood, whether it be more wood or less wood as today, for all we need, and therefore the circular and reuse of wood is important.
Yeah, because it's just worth noting that in hardwood, the yield in sawmilling is much, much lower than in conifers, which is why conifers traditionally is so good.
But there's also new products coming up. I mean, we've been talking before. We have done, when we were in Russia, we've done a lot of research on the birch. You know, we've done the ETA with the birch. We have CLT, we have glulam. Forestry is still a bit of a challenge because in Central Europe the birch is growing more crooked, and it's more difficult to cut it. But if the economics are right, I'm pretty sure people will use much more of this type of wood in the future. And that innovation process maybe should be faster because, as I said, for our lifespan it's too short. The forest and the nature will prevail, and it will adopt to whatever climate we will have, you know. But it may take 100 years or 300 years.
If I may come in here, because you represent two big companies or leading companies, and you're knowing this innovation approach. So what you just said, we realize that timber may be shorter, that we have more challenges to get the resource. Is this a driver for you to think more about these innovations, like the example of birchwood or other types of wood that might be relevant for UPM as well? Is this a field where you are investing? And what is the point about data sharing knowledge, sharing results?
Well, our focus in our company is very much about the chemical applications of wood. So we've been investing into, for example, a new biorefinery that works on the side products of beech wood in Germany, just as an example. So perhaps our innovation focus has been less on mechanical. Having said that, I think when I look at mechanical, and maybe the reason for this is that especially the bigger the company, the less you're suited for small batches of products, which is why we kind of maybe look at more of these relatively big refineries, etc. But I think also we really need to pay attention in the European context to making sure that bringing higher value add mechanical products, such as making construction components, which is very important for wooden construction, is actually profitable, because higher value add typically also means a higher share of labor in that, and we're not always in the Western context so competitive in that, to be quite honest. So it's very important to take care of that competitiveness in the European context.
Thank you.
Okay, so there were another question here, please.
Thank you. I'm Jos Boeren from the Norwegian Institute of Bioeconomic Research. So I also have questions related to innovation to Christoph and Jos. And I think the two companies are quite different. You know, you have an old company, is 1901 or something, and you're a relatively new company established in 2008. So also kind of different innovations. So my question is, what type of challenges you meet when you develop innovation in your firm? So I guess that you, apart from the financial, resource, but also in terms of knowledge, mobilizing teams, also not within your firm, but also, external from other resources. Thanks.
I'm the older one. I'm happy to start. I'm the older one in terms of company. Yeah, innovation is a very important process. I think for every company, if you're not look ahead in the future, then you're staying. And in our case, it was a very much an economic driver. You know, we had a very expensive raw material that was not competitive in international markets. So we were looking at increasing the value added of our product. And basically, the philosophy is to make the most value out of a tree. That's the philosophy, and that's how innovation was derived in our company. But we also have a clear margin, and I think I will hand with this over. We are supplying the construction building sector. So we are not the ones that are building. This is the task of our customers. We supply them the material, but prefabricated and advanced. And this way I can say that Cree is also a customer of ours, or we are allowed to supply to Cree.
Thank you, Christopher. You know, maybe give you the context of this innovation. So Hubert Rhomberg is the 4th generation of an Austrian company. I think they've been around for 120 years. And, you know, he inherited that company and thought about the future. And, you know, we were touching upon some of these aspects in terms of the challenge that we have as a society, labor, resource efficiency. So in terms of the principle, you know, what should be a solution that is future-proof? I mean, he started to think about these challenges for his own future, for the next generations. You know, how to deal with shortage of labor, how to deal with resource efficiency. So, you know, Cree is a product of that trade-off, like, you know, develop something future-proof. And in terms of execution, I think it's not any different from any other industry, right? You know, there's never enough capital. There's always resistance from the regulator. There's resistance from the industry because you're developing something new. So I think, you know, and that's, I think, one of the strengths that Europe represents, because there's a lot of family-owned companies. And I think if you, and this is more, let's say, capital market discussion, I think private companies have a longer horizon, right? I mean, you were already referring to, let's say, the biomass as having an extreme long duration beyond our, let's say, life expectancy. But I think private companies, specifically in Europe, what I've seen, compared that to other continents, you know, they take a longer term perspective, and they also have way more patience and capital available to invest. You know, they're, I think, better suited than lots of publicly quoted companies who have a very short term perspective. So, I mean, you need to do some research about that, you know, to scientifically prove that. But I think the private industry, specifically in Europe, is very well positioned, and it proves, because there's a lot of innovation coming out of these privately owned companies. And I think, you know, to put that in a more, let's say, global perspective, we Europeans have a tendency to undersell what we represent, right, compared to the Americans. I mean, I don't want to criticize them. Great people, great market, a lot of innovation, but I think we're not any different. And even in some aspects, we are way ahead. I think if you look at, you know, what you, for example, are delivering in terms of output, you know, in terms of marginal cost, you're talking about economics, you know, where are we on the marginal cost curve? I think there are plenty of examples of what comes out of Europe that can compete in the global market. So it's also that awareness, you know, do the benchmarking and just have that, you know, comfort to step in this world market and to sell it. Because I think we can be extremely competitive, and I think it shows also what we've seen here today. So it's a bit of a longer answer, but, you know, you see the context, incentive from private ownership, and then what is required, I think, to succeed. So.
No, thanks a lot. It's also a very quick comment is, of course, you know, each company has, you know, portfolio of innovation strategies for short-term and long-term perspective. So is this also the same with you? Do you have a portfolio for the innovation in the short term and also the other ones for the longer term?
I mean, if you want to break that down in categories, you know, I think when you look at private ownership, you know, in my experience, what I observe, you know, they're dealing with the daily reality of, you know, making things profitable and making things work. And part of that drive is to be innovative. I think lots of owners, they don't even realize that they are delivering a lot of innovation, because that's just part of their job. I mean, they don't know anything better than to improve and stay competitive. So yes, you can classify that in short and long-term innovation, but yeah, I think there's a lot of embedded commitment to innovate, but more importantly, to deliver. Because if you don't innovate, you don't exist. So that awareness is there, and how to classify that in short or long term. I mean, feel free to segment that. I think it's just part of the implied approach of what owners and managers represent.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So maybe we can go now to the...
Thank you very much. Anastasia Rchishina, Build for People co-programmed European Partnership. So first of all, thank you very much for all the speakers for inspirational insights into the domains. And I've got a question regarding the AEGIR project. So AEGIR is one of 30 Build for People projects, and as a part, as being it, it's supposed to report and to confirm to KPIs of Build for People. So you've touched quite a lot of KPIs in your presentation. However, not Build for People KPIs. Could you please elaborate just a bit? Thanks.
So this is mainly the work we are doing, but we also have a team which is dealing with circularity, and one of these team members, they have a broader perspective on sustainability. So they're also looking on human health, etc. So fortunately, we have them in the team, and this is this is mainly the focus we have at TU Delft.
Thank you.
Okay, so before Wayne, I will ask, because we have one presenter that didn't answer a question, and I will have one question for her now. So I understand that your project has a Cascade funding, I am right? Cascade funding, that you give some money to the rest, is it, I am right?
Yeah, we have a grant for companies.
Okay, that's my question is which is the value that you think that gives to the project to have this type of funding scheme in European projects?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to get different companies involved and SMEs, because we were considering having one or more companies as partner, but then you're often already directly or like choosing one beforehand, while our idea was more to leave the opportunities open and also see what happens during the project. And then we're also setting up guidelines for circular and zero waste design, and I think that gives an opportunity to set those criteria and to encourage companies to work in that way as well.
Okay, so this is something that somehow you will recommend to include in next topics, or it's something that...
I think I would recommend it, and also because we only have a few. I heard from some projects that if you have a lot of funding like that, it can be difficult to manage. But I think in a selected way and in a way to promote SMEs and companies to compete and to think about your project and your project values, I think it can be a lot of added value. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much. Any more questions from the audience? If not, I have some of them, but I am not in a hurry. My flight back home is tomorrow morning, so I mean, we can spend the whole day. If you agree, or should we go as we go? Okay, we can continue. Sometimes there are pros and cons to be the last one. So I'm used to be the last one. So this is we will take the advantage of this. So I have a question for you, Jos. I mean, the question is how do you integrate in your risk assessment? How do you integrate these changing weather conditions? I mean, the climate change and things like that. Do you integrate somehow in the definition of the risk in order to decide an investment here or there? I'm talking about the climate change new risk that have arisen, I would say, last 5 years or 10 years or something like that.
Right. Yes, for sure. I mean, it's not only us. I mean, we can take the example again of the institutional investor that is allocating to a new asset class. Let's call it timber real estate. They will make an inclusive assessment. So they will look at the biomaterial, which is upstream. You know, there's a lot of commercial plantations globally, and they will for sure like to understand what the risk is of the sourcing. What is the security of supply? You know, where do we have the origins, so the locations of productions that can secure supply. So I think when investors look at a new industry, they will turn every stone upside down. So it will be an inclusive assessment, from upstream, where the trees are, up to the final delivery. So, they spent a lot of time and money on understanding, where they are and what the exposures are. And, you will see that across lots of industries that, climate and climate risks and the implications, plus the mitigation that is available, that's a key component of their assessment. So I think if you compare that to 10 years ago, climate, it's definitely a topic, but I've also experienced that myself in real life. There is a lot of talk, and there's a lot of statistics, and there's a lot of challenges in trying to quantify that, which often leads to a kind of, there is a risk, it's remote, and everyone is, copying the neighbor without really addressing what the risks are or understanding what the risks are, because often it's a statistical model. I mean, good luck translating that in some underwriting, when you make your investment or business case, and somewhere in the assumption is climate risk. I mean, I think we can fight for a year about the probability of the impact of climate change for forestry in Central Europe. It's really difficult, but it's part of the discussion. But look, there's it's almost science and a probability trade-off, so really difficult. That's why also that, sharing of information, I've been hearing lots of things from different regions. I mean, if you consolidate that information, suddenly you have a very educated perspective about the opportunity or capacity to do more timber and real estate in Europe. So I think, that type of opportunity to share adds real value, because then you start to feed these assumptions. You have data proof, etc. So I hope it answers
yes, no,
question.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting, this perspective. I see that there is another question. Please stand, say your name. And
hello, I'm Jacinto Seguí. I come from Finsa. We're a wood manufacturing company. We produce from silty structures to facades. And the question is to a whole table, but to Cree. At least in Spain, we have, it's a question, it's 3 questions in one, sorry. We don't have so much time, but first is Spain now, a group of producers, developers, engineering companies. We are trying to redefine the law, the financing law of industrialized construction. Now we have a financial law for traditional construction, and that's a big problem for second transformation, not for first transformation like us, because we are, let's say, a big industrial group, and maybe we can have those financial problems. So this is the first question. Maybe in your market, how is that situation now? There's something going on by the government. Second one is the second transformation industry in Spain is not even existing. I mean, we have big industrial groups. We produce silty structures, windows, facades, but assembly companies, few, and not robotized, not standardized, and we are urgently calling the government to give aids to help to reindustrialize Spain with this need, no? And this is connected to the financial problem of industrialized construction, no? And third is developers in Spain are telling the government, hey guys, we are going to invest on sustainable buildings if you bonify us with more edificability, more percentage of higher buildings, because we have a crisis of apartments in Spain. So, and this has been like 3 years doing like this in Spain. Round, nobody says anything, government says, okay, no, come on. And always the private part, the private sector is pushing, and the public part, I don't know if they don't have time, they don't have a fast response for that, or maybe they think, I don't know if I'm going to solve this in my 4-year political whatever, but let's see if the second one will fix it, no?
I think, and I don't want to sell Cree, that's not the point, but just again going to the concept and the principle, and developing something that can travel across Europe and that can apply to local building codes, that can comply to local architecture preferences, that can fit into a supply chain. I mean, CRE as a solution has proven to be able to do that, right? So I think when you see that deadlock or spinning wheel type of situation, you can refer to projects that have been successfully completed and financed in Europe. And you could be in a position to say, okay, I want to build student housing or residential. I've seen the economics work in Germany or in Italy. Why wouldn't it work in Spain? So in the end, I think, and that's also where the private industry needs to be way more proactive instead of constantly looking at the governments and say, listen, help me out because I don't succeed. I think there's a lot of opportunity and best practice available abroad. I mean, Europe is not big, so easy to travel. You just take a business case that succeeded and you replicate. And, I'm happy to pick up that challenge and to help you. If you say, look, we want to do residential, we can't make the economics or the regulatory part work. Let's take an example of something that was successfully built in Germany. You bring that to Spain. If you need some support, look, it's the EU, right? It's the same material. This morning someone said a fire is the same in, I think, Spain as in Germany. So I think, be proactive, show that it works, and show that this can be replicated. So yeah, there will be resistance for sure. But look, we're also succeeding. I think there are many examples of people who have shown to be successful. So no, thanks for the question.
This is the very last question, so thank you so much. I hope that this has somehow shown how innovations can stimulate this circularity wood and can, let's say, push the sector and the society to the more use of, in a sustainable way, more use of wood. Okay, so that will be this session C to an end. So thank you so much to the presenters and to all of you for being here. Thank you so much.